And well, welcome back to New York Sports WickerMedia. I'm Y2K99. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to watch these videos. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different for our game preview. I wanted to do my very first interview, and to do that, we're going to go about 1,500 miles west. We're going to head right to the heart of Chicago, Illinois, and we're going to talk to somebody who I've known for a long time, maybe 15, 16 years now. And as big of a fan as I am of New York sports, he's just as big of a fan of Chicago sports. So this is Q, my longtime close personal friend. Me and Gene Okerlund would appreciate us using that phrase. Q, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Getting ready for a crazy weekend here in sports. It's kind of why we enjoy this kind of time of year.
No, it most definitely is, and definitely want to thank you for taking the time to give us a little glimpse into who the Chicago Bears are right now. So let's do kind of like an overall appraisal of where things are right now. Now, both of our teams are not exactly in what I would call the mountaintop right now. Jets on their way up. Bears doing a little bit of a rebuild right now. Now, as a Bears fan, how do you feel about where the organization is as a whole right now?
Um, well, going in, this is how I assume this is just a complete evaluation year. The Bears are going in with new leadership, both the general manager and at head coach. New GM Ryan Poles has come in, cleared house of a lot of big contract players, traded Khalil Mack in the offseason, and then recently, right before the trade deadline, traded away Roquan Smith, who had a contract dispute since it was the last year of his rookie deal, and he was a lot of money, and he was negotiating for himself, not with an actual any representation. And then also traded away Robert Quinn, who was a big free agent signing a few years ago under the previous administration. So a lot of it is trying to clear the deck of a lot of big contracts, trying to evaluate the talent that's on that roster and see what needs to be fixed. New head coach Matt Eberflus, the former defensive coordinator from the Indianapolis Colts, comes in. He's preaching the hits principle for his defense to essentially get more turnovers and bring that style that he had that was quite successful in Indianapolis and bringing that over to the Chicago Bears. So I just looked at this with a new administration, new head coach, trying to see what kind of talent they have. This is just trying to see what you've got. If you win, great. If not, that's fine too. The third thing, the most important thing is, as you're well aware of, that has been a focal point for the Jets as well, is evaluating the quarterback position. The previous general manager, Ryan Pace, traded up in 2020 in the 2021 draft to practically steal Justin Fields away and selecting Justin Fields as the quarterback of the future. This coming 3 years before when Ryan Pace unnecessarily traded up one spot with San Francisco to draft Mitchell Trubisky, and that experiment ended poorly. So he made this one final move before his tenure ended with the Bears, and Justin Fields, I mean, he's shown some incredible moments this season, obviously having over 60-yard rushing touchdowns in back-to-back games. He's been shown to be a great dual threat. So it looks like he is going to be the guy. He's proven that the Bears don't necessarily need to go and take another first-round pick on a quarterback in this upcoming draft. Looks like he's going to be the guy. And that's really what the third thing was going into the season, is ensuring that, yes, Justin Fields is a competent quarterback that they can build the franchise around. And through the first 11 games of the season, he's shown that.
Now, as far as the offense goes, their offensive coordinator is Luke Getsy, who typically has been a proponent of the West Coast offense, which is something that we as Jets fans are used to with the LaFleur and Saleh tandem. But it seems, though, with the emergence of Justin Fields and what his skill sets are, it seems as though they may be actually abandoning the West Coast offense, and now it almost seems like Baltimore West sort of running a Lamar Jackson style offense. Is that something that you've noticed? Like, how has this offense changed from the beginning of the year to where it is now?
Well, I'm going back to it. It's complete evaluation. So this is completely new. So Luke Getsy came over from the Green Bay Packers. It's his first time being an offensive coordinator because he was a quarterback's coach for the Packers recently. So he's adjusting to that role as well, and he's got to see what works. What's surprising is the Bears, for as strong as they are with that offense, they have been amongst the league leaders in rushing. And that's partially due to Fields having to abandon the pocket and run for his life, but also has designed QB runs. But the Bears have a great running back tandem in David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, although Herbert just got hurt recently, is now on injured reserve. But Montgomery is going into his final years of his contract, and there's a chance that the Bears might choose not to re-sign him and let him go to free agency, as is the case in general with across the league, where you have teams that will draft a running back, keep them for the 5 years, and choose not to re-sign him for a big money contract just because of the recycling of the position. You can easily replace a running back for far cheaper. So there's a chance that come the end of this season, Montgomery, for as great as a running back he has been for the Bears season during the course of his Bears tenure, that he might not be back next year. But regardless, to your point, Luke Getsy has had to adapt the changes and adjust to the role for the first time. So he's had to see, okay, what am I going to do with Fields? Because what I did at the beginning of the year didn't work. So he went to the run a lot, and a lot of that had to do with Justin just having to run for his life and avoid getting sacked, and then make those adjustments. And then we have a midseason or a trade deadline acquisition of Chase Claypool to add some depth at the receiver position, because frankly, the Bears receiving core at the start of the year was unacceptable. Darnell Mooney, who has been a very solid and dependable receiver for the Bears, enters the number one receiver. They added a lot of depth with very good like 3 and number 4 receivers. N'Keal Harry from the Patriots was hurt for most of the preseason, and in the season he's just started to come back. But they got Byron Pringle from the Chiefs, Dante Pettis, a lot of guys that are on that mid tier, but really not a strong number 2 receiver. And with the Bears having a lot of cap space, we can discuss that later. The decision was made at the trade deadline. It's probably better to trade for a receiver on a rookie contract, in the case of Chase Claypool, who has a year plus on that contract, than it would be to overspend in free agency to draft or to sign a receiver who probably isn't going to be worth that amount of money when there's a lot of needs on this team going for the future. So Luke Getsy has had to make a lot of changes to the style of his offense and adapt with the roster that he has, because there's a lot that needs fixing on the offense. But what's for certain is you're going to have Justin Fields and you're going to have Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool for the next year plus.
And we as Jets fans know there always seems to be debates with an offensive coordinator that the best coaches are able to adjust to the strengths of the players that they have. And if Luke Getsy is able to do that, then this Bears offense could turn around quite well. The running game has been fantastic, 195 rushing yards per game, but only 128 passing yards per game. It's almost like the reverse of the recent trends in the NFL. And you mentioned, I just had to throw this out, you mentioned the offense needing some help. Realizing that there are 2 ex-Jets tight ends on the roster, in Trevon Wesco and Ryan Griffin. I couldn't pass this opportunity up without asking you about those 2 and just how Bears fans feel about those 2 in general.
There's a local area tight end who is a high draft pick, who's basically stolen the spotlight from that tight end position. That's Cole Kmet from Notre Dame, who has over the past several weeks just rejuvenated his own career and shown that he's another key cog into the Bears offense for the future, connecting with Justin Fields. He had a 2 touchdown game a couple games ago. He's showing to prove himself that not only is he a capable blocking tight end, but he can be someone that can be relied upon to be a threat in the deep game in passing. So as far as the tight end position goes, the Bears, ever since the decision under the mindset of one Mike Bartz to not keep Greg Olsen around, have been struggling to find a true dependable tight end that can serve both purposes, be a decent blocking tight end, but also prove to be a threat downfield. And looks like Cole Kmet has shown that over this season. So as far as Bears tight ends go, it's Cole Kmet that needs to be the focus at that position for the Bears.
I was even going to ask you about the biggest playmaker to watch for, but the more I look into it, the more it definitely appears to be Cole Kmet, especially in this game against the Jets, because with this defensive line being as potent as it is as rushing the passer and having two elite outside cornerbacks, usually the best idea is to go for short passes and attack the Jets with the linebackers in coverage. The safeties could be a little bit up and down, but I wouldn't be trying the outside receivers against the Jets on Sunday. Let's talk about the offensive line for a moment. How have they done with we can relate to this. We've been through a lot of pain with the offensive line, but it's mostly been because of injuries. Now, how would you talk about the offensive line, both with run blocking versus pass blocking?
Well, the running stats can prove the pass blocking is not there. There's a reason why the Bears have had to rely on the run, because the run blocking has been there. It's the pass blocking that hasn't. It's forced Justin Fields to have to abandon the pocket and have to do a lot of these QB or design QB runs, because the pass blocking isn't there to give this relatively young quarterback the time. Maybe he gets enough time, but when you have strong defenders on the other side and a lot of inexperienced and low quality offensive linemen out there to protect him, the pass blocking isn't there. So there's your reason why the run has been so excessive, has been just completely dominating over the passing for the Bears, statistically speaking, is because the pass blocking isn't there. Offensive line has been hampered by injuries, but to be quite honest, the depth isn't there. Their first round pick, Tevin Jenkins, from a year ago, they just didn't know what to do with him. Was he going to play a tackle? Was he going to play guard? They've been moving him around. They've been substituting him here and there. It's been a real mix there. Cody Whitehair had been hurt for a little bit. Lucas Patrick, who had played at center for a little bit, had to have toe surgery. He's out for the rest of the year. So the offensive line really has been one of the weaknesses on this Bears team, and it's definitely going to be a position that will be heavily addressed both in the draft and in free agency for next season. But there's still 5 or 6 games left to be played for this Bears team, and they got to do what they can. Offensive line, just it's not one of the things that is going to keep them from winning, but it's definitely a part of the team that's going to make sure they lose. And when they face a Jets team with a strong defense, one of the strongest defenses in the league on Sunday, I'm quite worried.
Okay, so let's flip it around a little bit. I want to talk about the Bears defense and the fact that they have traded maybe the heart and soul of their team. They traded their best pass rusher in Robert Quinn, maybe one of the absolute best tacklers in the league in Roquan Smith, a guy that I have been high on ever since he first came out of college. The defense has really taken a heck of a step back. I believe they're allowing 35 points per game in their last 3 games. Let's talk about how this defense has changed from the beginning of the season to now in a Robert and Roquan less existence.
So we'll focus on Roquan first, because Roquan at the start of the year, as I just mentioned earlier, he was representing himself. He doesn't have an agent. He was negotiating with the team. He had sort of a hold in during training camp where he would show up but just wouldn't participate in any non-contact or contact drills. And it got to be a very public through the media debate as far as that getting handled and eventually getting settled. But the gist of it was Roquan, in his mind, thought he was worth basically a $20 million a year linebacker. The Bears are evaluating. You have a new GM, a new head coach who's a defensive-minded head coach. And given what Eberflus's system is, an outside linebacker in that system is not worth $20 million a year. Roquan's role to the team, his importance to the team is very high. But when you have a new head coach and a new system, and you have a guy who's seeking a big money contract, and it's just going to butt heads, and you can't have that, happening throughout the course of the season. Roquan had some great games this year, but the reality was they were not going to re-sign him. They were not going to franchise tag him either. So at the end of the day, you're either going to let him walk for nothing, or you're going to try and trade him and get some sort of value for him. And what the Bears did, they traded him to Baltimore. They got a draft pick out of it. AJ Klein, who they ended up releasing and is now in Buffalo and had a decent game on that Thanksgiving game against Detroit.
Yep.
So that was the deal with Roquan. With Robert Quinn, who ended up becoming the franchise single season leader in sacks last year because of the extended season. They were trying to move him on draft day. Just couldn't find the right trade, and a lot of it is because of the money. He came in on a big money contract from the previous GM Ryan Pace after a pretty good run in Dallas. And with Quinn, last year was his best year by far under that contract. So it was the right time to trade him. I think just the difficulty in trying to trade him on draft night, it just didn't work out to the best of those, whatever offers, if they, disclose them, whatever they were, they probably weren't getting what they were seeking. So they just had to let it play out. That's what they ended up doing. They let it play out, got close to the trade deadline, and then moved him to Philadelphia. And, now he has a chance to, compete on a potential Super Bowl champion team on the Eagles and, get some draft capital out of it. So you take away two of the more, veteran leaders, two of the more productive members of your defense, and you're left with replacing them with, low-level rookie veteran talent that's not going to provide the same value. Defense is young, but again, it's all evaluations. They're trying to see what works, see what fits. And one of the bright spots that has come up is Eddie Jackson, who was such a huge member of that 2018 playoff team, the 2018 division champion team, who got hurt in the game against Green Bay and really has not been the same quality player that he was during that 2018 season. And he started this season actually show some glimpses of vintage Eddie Jackson with some great interceptions, some great defensive play. So that has helped to have him play a little bit better in the secondary. But at cornerback, you got a rookie in Kyler Gordon who's hurt, Jaquan Brisker, who is in concussion protocol after the game in Atlanta. So even now, those two young guys have been learning on the job in their rookie year and been doing quite well. They might not play on Sunday against the Jets, which is going to make things a lot worse on a team that's defensive depth is already depleted. Back to Roquan, the guy that's been replacing him was an undrafted linebacker out of Wisconsin, Jack Sanborn, a local kid out of Lake Forest, who had a great last couple of games. So maybe we're seeing signs of, hey, maybe this might be a diamond into the rough type of guy, and a local kid at that too, to maybe bridge the gap to see maybe they don't have to spend that kind of money on a linebacker in free agency or spend a high draft pick on a linebacker come draft time. So the defense has stayed steady, but again, they're giving up 30 plus points a game, and they're having to trying to score 30 points a game. It's hit or miss here with the defense. They're learning, and Eberflus is learning for his first time, implementing his system and trying to see what players that are currently on this roster can fit the system and see what needs to be added, both in free agency and in the draft for next season.
Fantastic. All right, well, we're going to get into some specific stuff about the game in a moment. But before we do that, I want to give you an opportunity to turn the tables. So if you have any questions, just a couple of questions about the Jets in general, so just to get a better understanding of Gang Green to be ready for the game on Sunday. So, just whatever questions you might have about the Jets. Let's talk.
So I think coming into this season, the expectations for the Bears, as I mentioned, some fans, I mean, they're meatballish here in Chicago. They kind of want to see the Bears win, and if they're having a bad year, just beat Green Bay. But there was sort of an expectation that they'll compete, given I think most fans don't think very highly of Detroit, even though they're a team on the rise. Minnesota was a team the Bears almost had a chance to come. You know, they had a lead against Minnesota earlier in the year and blew that game. And Green Bay is a team on the decline, so I think Bears fans thought maybe there was a chance, but I thought the ceiling was 6 wins going into the year. For the Jets going into the year, what were your expectations and where they are now with them right now currently in the playoff contention?
It's so strange because to me going into the season, I figured if I had to be realistic, I'd go about 7 wins. If everything went about as well as it could realistically go, I really thought 10 wins was possible. Now, if you had told me that the Jets would be in this kind of playoff contention with the lackluster level play of quarterback that they've had, plus lose your best running back, lose 4 to 5 offensive linemen, that I would have found very hard to believe. But I felt before the season that the coaches and the quarterback had to take a step up. Now, when you talk to Jets fans, you'll still find a lot of people who don't believe in Robert Saleh, Mike LaFleur, and Jeff Ulbrich. But it is very interesting, I've noticed, over the last month, since like week 4 when this defense started to come together, nobody seems to be calling for Jeff Ulbrich's head. It's amazing how good play makes geniuses out of run-of-the-mill coaches, you know? But yeah, it's been pretty amazing to watch this team break a lot of jinxes. They'd only won 1 game in Pittsburgh in their entire existence. They did that this year. They hadn't won a game in the AFC East since 2019, and that was a Week 17 game against Buffalo, where Buffalo was sitting a bunch of their starters. They've won several division games already. You know, they're already right now they're 2-2. You know, they've done quite a bit. The one thing that is obviously very disconcerting is the play of Zach Wilson, but his worst games have been against Bill Belichick and New England. Is it a New England thing? It may be, it may not be, but he has been at least serviceable in my mind in most of the other games he has played, but he hasn't been the reason why the Jets have won a game yet. He did lead them down on 1 drive in the 4th quarter against Pittsburgh. That was his first game back from injury. He was able to take them down the field, but the big question is, where is this team as far as the quarterback goes? And it just shows you, if you're going to win in the NFL today, if you don't have at the very least, a very good quarterback, I won't go great, but very good, you have to be excellent in the other phases of the game. And the defense has been lights out, in my mind, over the last 5-6 weeks. They've been absolutely fantastic. They've been dealing with some of the worst starting field position in the NFL. I mean, the Patriots started their average drive on their own 30 to 35 yard line. The Jets are around their own 15 to 20. And the Jets still basically held them to 3 points in Foxborough. There is something to say. We saw how many points the Patriots put up last night against Minnesota. It's not a small feat to do that. So I'm thrilled with them. The special teams, for the most part, have been very much improved. They've been bad against New England, but they've been pretty solid against everybody else. It's pretty crazy. The Jets have a good kicker since Jason Myers, since 2018. We finally have a reliable kicker. The return game's been fine. The running game has been, I would say, okay, but losing Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker, that has devastated the team. Breece Hall was the one home run threat they had at running back. I love Michael Carter. I like James Robinson, who they picked up in a trade from Jacksonville. Ty Johnson, I never need to see again. I wish they would activate Bam Knight from NC State. I'm waiting for the day. But the run game, to me, it's all about this run game for me, because the Jets have run for at least 1 rushing touchdown in every win, and every loss they've had, they have not scored a rushing touchdown. The running game is very indicative of what this offense does. And, you know, right now, we should be getting some offensive linemen back. Max Mitchell and George Fant are now practicing. That could help outside a tackle. Dwayne Brown has been fine despite playing with what is believed to be a torn rotator cuff. The veteran has fought hard. Laken Tomlinson, left guard's been a little bit up and down. Rough start. He has not been, I would say, the level of guard that we as Jets fans were hoping for. Center, Connor McGovern, he is what he is. He's a good, solid journeyman. The less you hear people talking about him, the better. But at right guard, one of the big losses the Jets had was Nate Herbig. week they had to play Dan Feeney, who's best known for having a great mullet and crushing beers on his foreheads at Islander playoff games. He's not exactly known for his blocking ability. And the right side of the line really struggled because Nate Herbig, who's just a nasty SOB, he wasn't available for the game. He should be back for this one. He's been limited in practice this week. But at right tackle, that it was Cedric O. Don't ask me to pronounce the last name, but number 70. He's been okay, but he's okay against bad competition, but he's going to struggle against good players. I mean, seeing Matthew Judon go against the likes of him was a horrifying sight to see. So the sooner that a Mitchell or a Fant could return, definitely the better the Jets offense is going to be.
You mentioned Breece Hall getting hurt. Obviously, it was going to be a Rookie of the Year candidate by far at the outset, just given the strong play that he had and having that ACL injury and just basically wrecking this season. And I think had Breece Hall stayed healthy, you guys might be maybe a couple wins better than you guys are now. I think he's one of the highlights of this team for years to come, for sure. I don't mind having, Michael Carter and James Robinson are a decent duo. And given the way the Bears run defense is, I think maybe you need to rely on them a little bit less because the Bears run defense is kind of stout, but not outstanding, not in the sense of the Jets defense is. They're okay. The Bears can be run on. But I think the way you're going to beat the Bears defense, especially without having Kyler Gordon, especially with and Jaquan Brisker, is through the air, which leads us to this. There's a chance that Justin Fields doesn't play, given the fact that he had a shoulder injury late in the game against Atlanta. The decision was made by Robert Saleh earlier this week to bench Zach Wilson and start Mike White over Joe Flacco. What did you think of that decision, just across the board? One, benching Zach Wilson, and then choosing White over Flacco to start the game on Sunday.
When I would have not benched Zach Wilson just based off his game against New England, to me that was not enough to bench him. He's still 5-2 as a starter. The fact remains. It was the way he conducted himself after the game. It was the mental aspects of it, and that's what frustrated me. And that's why I was a fan of benching Mike White. Because believe me, if the Jets are going to have a get-right game on offense, I'm sorry to tell you, I think it's this week at home against Chicago. But as well as I do, because Bears fans can be a little bit hard on quarterbacks. They've had their opportunities over the years. The first overthrow that happens, the first short pass Zach misses, the first screen pass he misses, the Boo Birds are going to come down from the top of the 300 section all the way down to the coach's club right behind the sideline, and you would have heard the Mike White chant start. They would have had no patience for him whatsoever. Now, I'm not advocating that you coach to please the fans, but I am saying you put your team in the best position to win. And I don't think Zach Wilson is in a place right now, fundamentally, in terms of his footwork and things like that, where he is going to lead a playoff caliber team to a deep run into the season. If this team was 3-7, 3-8, I'd say fine, play them. It would have been the whole evaluation period, just like you were talking about. But this isn't a place. This defense is ready to win. This is a in my mind, top 5 defense in football right now. So to me, it made the most sense. I think Zach has been a little bit more humbled since he found out he was getting benched. If I had to really predict on what's going to happen, I think Zach plays this week and next week in Minnesota because the Jets go to Minnesota after this game. I think Mike White will have a rough game on the road because White is good as long as he doesn't have to throw a pass about 15 yards. Okay, this is not a player that you're going to trust to win a game by throwing the ball deep. He is most comfortable throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage to a running back. I'm looking for targets to Michael Carter and to James Robinson on Sunday. Maybe to a tight end, but that's what I'm really looking at. But no, I don't think that it would have made sense to play Zach. I think the best thing he really needs is a mental reset. And you know what you talked about? If you talk to 10 Jets fans, you might get an even split down the middle on if Zach should play this week or not. My opinion is he needs to sit down for a little bit because, again, not because of the bad throws, but because of where he is mentally. He needs to take a step back. It does not mean his career is over. A lot of good quarterbacks have been sat down. Tua, Alex Smith, there's been a lot of them. It doesn't mean that the story is over. But this is a team that is just looking for competent quarterback play. You know all I'm looking for at this point, Q? Trent Dilfer. I just want him to be Trent Dilfer level from that Ravens team. I'm not saying the Jets are on that level of a defense, but the way the rest of that team is playing right now, this team is capable of going some way, but you can't have the quarterback make these just ridiculous turnovers and not make basic plays.
Or as I mentioned, the guy who has actually won, Joe Flacco. That's one of my questions. Why did Saleh go White over Flacco? Is it just to make sure that White has some reps, knowing that he knows that Flacco, because Flacco started the year while Wilson was hurt, and he does have that Super Bowl winning experience on a team that has a chance to get there this year?
That Super Bowl was a long time ago, my friend. It's been a minute. Flacco, to be honest with you, and I was at the opening game, as you may know, and no, he is not. I don't think he is really capable of delivering the ball like he was. He did a great job at the end of the game against Cleveland. But of the 12 quarters he played, I would say he had maybe 2 that I would call good enough. I just don't think he's there. I think he's best served as a mentor. There's a reason why a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, I believe it was, Coach Saleh said, Mike White is now going to be our number 2 quarterback. Joe Flacco is now going to be relegated to the bench, because they know what they have in Flacco at this point. They want to see if Mike White is a capable enough quarterback to where he is worthy of being kept around as a backup going forward. He's really only played 2.5 games with the Jets. A little more than, just a touch more. He's played parts of 2 games and 2 whole games is what he's really done. So, and now the one everybody wants to talk about is the Cincy game. Well, I mean, he completed a lot of passes, but they weren't going down the field. Cincy just didn't know how to play him. So these other teams, they're going to have an idea on how to play Mike White. So what the Bears should be trying to do is take away the short passes. Dare Mike White to beat them deep. Not too different than how the Patriots played against Zach Wilson. Wilson wasn't able to do it. We got to see if White is able to do it. But I will throw this one back at you, because I was going to get to it when we got to the game specific stuff. But since you've already mentioned it, do you think? Because I don't think Justin Fields should play. I've had an AC joint tear. I know what it feels like. I know what I couldn't do, and I'm just a regular Joe. So I can only imagine what he felt like. But I got the same injury in college, and I couldn't lift my arm past like this height for 2 weeks, and I had to be in a sling for 2 weeks. Do you think the Bears would actually risk it and play Justin Fields in this game?
My thought process is, and I think a lot of more of the educated sports media here in Chicago have the idea. I think the main question regarding Fields going in the year is he the guy? And he's proven that, yes, he is the guy. You don't want to risk the future of Justin Fields just to have him play a game against the Jets in a season where you're not really competing for the playoffs this year. The Bears have this game against the Jets and a game against Green Bay before their bye. It's perfectly okay to let him take this week off. If you want him to play against Green Bay, fine. Or you can just say, you know what? Give yourself the full 3 weeks, come back, play the last 4 games of the season, and let it play out that way. However, the Bears' depth at quarterback is not that good. You're well aware of the Bears' backup quarterback, Trevor Siemian, former Jet.
And Nate Peterman behind him. Widely
and
regarded
Nathan
as the
Peterman,
worst quarterback. Yeah.
So if Fields is inactive, the Bears have Nathan Peterman on the practice squad, who would be elevated to be the backup. So the Bears, if they choose not to have Justin Fields play on Sunday against the Jets, you would have Trevor Siemian as your starter and Nathan Peterman as your backup. So that completely rules out the running game, that threat of having the quarterback run. So you're going to have a pocket passer against the defensive line like the Jets have. With the Bears' offensive line, it's not going to be pretty. I would be shocked to see the Bears even get 100+ passing yards against the Jets if we have Trevor Siemian start. But again, this season we're not competing. We're not here to make the wild card. maybe there were games, earlier in the year that probably could have kept that dream alive, but this isn't what the goal was. The goal for this year was to evaluate. You have a new GM, a new coach, and you have a quarterback that you need to see if he was truly the guy. I think we know that there's no point in trying. And right now, the Bears are currently in the spot for the number 3 draft pick. So by all means, Jets, please beat us.
The way you're speaking, this is very reminiscent of where my team has been for the last couple of years, where you have the website you track the most is Tankathon.
Tankathon, yeah. I have it up on my page. Yeah.
favorite places, tab mark, bookmarked, everything. Yeah. At this point, the only thing I'm really checking Tankathon for is the remaining strength of schedule amongst teams, and it's not a feeling that I'm used to. Just to go back to your previous question, you know what my real goal was at the end of the year? It wasn't about a number of wins, but going into the next to last week of the season, I just wanted the Jets to be in the hunt graphic on CBS. Division winner, wild card, in the hunt. I wanted to be in the hunt column, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do that going forward.
And you mentioned the in the hunt thing before we move on. That's sort of like a fun moment when the Bears, I think at the time, were like 3-5, and they were still in the hunt because of how bad the NFC was across the board.
Right.
I mean, the depth in the NFC this year, it's really Philly, maybe Minnesota. I mean, they just eked out a win against New England. And then the rest, I mean, the NFC South is garbage. The NFC West is just being beat to shreds. The Bears were in the hunt for up until the last few weeks. They were in the hunt graphic. And just goes to show how bad the NFC is this season.
Yeah, and we can see the way the quarterbacks seem to be migrating from the NFC to the AFC. A lot of big free agents, moved over that way. It's amazing. I mean, there's been a lot of disappointing AFC teams, particularly the Raiders, the Broncos. But yeah, no doubt that the AFC is where the power lies. All right, so let's kind of get a little granular on the game itself. So who is one dark horse player on the Bears that Jets fans, offense or defense, that the Jets should be paying attention to on Sunday?
Well, I mentioned him briefly. I'll probably just pick one on offense and one on defense. I'll go with the defense first. I mentioned Jack Sanborn, the outside linebacker that basically replaced Roquan Smith. He's had his last few games have been really tremendous. I believe 2 games ago he had like 15 tackles. So if you guys are going to be running, I would look out for number 57, Jack Sanborn, out of Wisconsin, Lake Forest kid. So he's one to watch out for on the defense. And then offensively, we mentioned Komet, but really the guy that really hasn't gotten into gear since coming over via trade was Chase Claypool. And if Justin Fields doesn't start, I worry to see how the connection will be between he and Trevor Siemian. So if the Bears do anything on offense, passing wise, I want to see if they're going to try and interact with Chase Claypool, just because his first few games here, he really hasn't shown that he's the quality talent that they traded a second round pick to get. But Chase Claypool is somebody that I want to see something from as far as who the Jets need to look out for, especially with Khalil Herbert out. David Montgomery is going to be the bell cow back. So if the Bears do anything at all on Fields is out, the one guy to target is David Montgomery.
And if I had to give you a couple on my end, I would watch, as far as a pass rusher, watch out for Bryce Huff, number 47, who really comes in. He's really a pass rushing specialist. He's not very good against the run, but he has really started to emerge this season. We started to see it 2 years ago. Undrafted free agent, had some glimpses as a pass rusher, was limited last season due to back problems. But he's the real reason why the Jets traded away Jacob Martin, because the emergence of Bryce Huff, also Jermaine Johnson, basically made Martin completely expendable. So Huff has absolutely overwhelmed. He is one of the biggest reasons the Jets beat Buffalo. He just dominated the right side of the Bills' offensive line on that last drive by Josh Allen. So definitely watch for number 47 on if it's a third and long and it's an obvious pass rushing situation, especially if Fields isn't in the lineup. That's definitely a player you need to pay attention to. As far as the offense goes, this is tricky because I feel like you could go after the Bears in a number of different ways, really. But I know they're very blitz heavy because they've struggled to get that pass rush without the blitz. I really expect a lot of passes to the running backs. I think that James Robinson actually could have a pretty decent game here. He's had one receiving touchdown already. It could be Carter, it could be Robinson, but I've just got a feeling that Robinson is capable of doing more than he's done against New England. So I think when Robinson gets going, he's going to be a tough player to bring down. So that's what I would say. All right, well, let's do some score predictions. I'll go first. I'll give you a chance to kind of think this one over. But I'm going to go. I feel like you almost need to have two predictions for this game, right? One with Fields and one without. You almost have to do that. I'm still leaning towards the Bears not playing him, so that's what I'm going to base this on. I do think the Bears can have like maybe one drive, maybe because Mike White is prone to a turnover too. He is prone to interceptions. The only way I think the Jets really lose this game is if they beat themselves, dumb penalties and turnovers. But I will say that the Bears put a few points on the board. I just think the Jets are going to be a little bit too good with their run game, and I think the defense is going to cause some turnovers. At least I'm going to say the Jets get 2 turnovers in this game, and that's the difference. So my final is going to be Jets 20, Bears 10.
Oof. I'm going to give you guys a little bit more points just because I'm going to the assumption. I'm just assuming the Fields isn't going to play. There's no need to have him play. He's got a separated shoulder. There's no reason to have him play. So I'm going to go into the idea that Trevor Siemian's going to start. I think they might get a chance to score maybe a touchdown, but I think it's going to be a complete shell-shocking, dominating win by the Jets. I'll say 28-13 Jets.
Okay. I'm just not quite ready to believe in Mike White being able to deliver the ball down the field to guys like Corey Davis who's coming back down the field. That's like my one hesitation with
we get Garrett Wilson, right?
Oh yeah. Garrett's been really, really good. Yeah. There have been a lot of good wide receivers this year between Wilson, Olave, Drake London. What a year it's been for rookie wide receivers, no doubt. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me today on our first interview. And hey, I wish you luck the rest of the way. After Sunday,
I'll close on this. One of our favorites, who's spent time in both Chicago and is a Jets fan, Mike Greenberg. He was on the radio here locally, and he was of the opinion that the Bears are in the situation that the Jets were in last year, in the sense that they have a rookie quarterback. They've got a lot of cap space, and they're a team on the rise. And he thinks that the Bears are a team that he thinks they're a year away from where the Jets are. Do you think that the Bears can be in that situation if they hit everything right in the draft and in free agency, where they could be in the position where the Jets are now, where they're on the rise? They're a team that may not win the division because of Buffalo, but can certainly get past New England and Miami and get a shot into the wild card.
Okay, so before I answer your question about the Bears, how are you doing on cap space going into the offseason?
Over $100 million.
That's not too bad. Okay, So here's what I would say. Number one, you're in a division that is, in my mind, not weaker than the AFC East. Mm-hmm. I don't see any Buffaloes in that division right now. I would say this: the Jets hit it out of the park with this draft. They did about as well in this draft as you could do. Let's go through the names. So Sauce Gardner, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Garrett Wilson, elite weapon, quickly becoming that. Jermaine Johnson hasn't played as much the way that this team rotates their defensive linemen, but he's made some big plays. Breece Hall, we know what he was going to be before he got hurt. Michael Clemens, their last pick in the 4th round, has been fantastic. He's just one scary SOB. He can play the run, he can pass, and he has that deep voice that'll just scare you to death. Just the Jets did a thing. The players random questions. They said, "Name your favorite Taylor Swift song." Michael Clemens just stares at the camera and he just does. I think the cameraman started running. But I mean, the only one really who hasn't produced on the field is Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end from Ohio State. But this class has been an absolute smash. This is probably the best draft class that I have seen since 2000, when you had Pennington, Coles, Abraham, Ellis, Anthony Beck, and may even be better because a number of these picks were later in the draft. You had a couple of 4th rounders as well. So you need to hit that draft, but you do have the cap space like the Jets did, and they signed DJ Reed, who doesn't get the attention playing across from Sauce Gardner, but he's been fantastic. To me, the Jets have the best 1-2 cornerback tandem in the league. The only one close to me is Philadelphia with Bradbury and Slay. I would really go that far. So, I mean, the other free agents have been a little bit more mixed when you have, like CJ Uzama hasn't been the best receiving tight end, but he's been a good blocker. He's been a good leader, which this team really, really needed. Laken Tomlinson, we talked about him as well. They brought Flacco back. So, yeah, but again, it's really all about the draft and being able to integrate those players. And the Jets did a fantastic job of it this year. If the Bears do the same thing, you know what? They can have a big jump next season.
Awesome. We're optimistic. I mean, we both want our teams to do well. I'm sure you're well aware of how I want you guys to do well.
I do. It's been 22 years since the Jets have beaten the Bears. We'll see. Well, that was just before we knew each other.
I think that'll be the last time that you'll have to worry about it. I think come Sunday, I think you'll be able to focus on celebrating a win against the Bears.
Well, that leaves the streaks against New England, Philadelphia, and making the playoffs for the first time in 12 years. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me, and I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you back here with more content once I'm back in the Wicker Chair.